right. Welcome everyone to the first in the Systems Map discussion series sessions. My name is Elena Ionescu. I am the Chief Sustainability and Knowledge Development Officer for the Specialty Coffee Association, and I'm going to be hosting our conversation today. So for those of you who haven't been on one of these webinars or live discussion sessions in the past, I'll go through a few basic housekeeping rules and then introduce our panelists, and then we can get started with the conversation. So on the sidebar of your GoToWebinar screen, you should see a few different options, including a questions panel where you can enter written questions that you have either for me about the systems map itself, for the panelists about their own experiences, and that's how we would prefer to receive your input versus, say, the raising hand function, just because sometimes technology can make it difficult for us to hear someone and to understand whatever the question is. So that would be our preference. Please feel free to use that questions function whenever you want to. And my colleagues at SCA who are behind the scenes will be taking those questions and making sure that we, the panelists, presenters, see them. After this session ends, there will be a recording available, and it will be sent out to all of you who registered via email also, and you may feel free to forward that on, as well as on our sca.coffee watch page. Also, next week we'll have another one of these webinars. We'll get to that in a little bit later in the conversation, and ask you all for your input. And next week's will be on exporters. So today we're starting with farming and processing. We'll move on to exporters, importers, and then roasters and brewers, or roasting and brewing if you're following along on your map. I'm really pleased to be hosting this and excited to hear from the panelists today. We have three people, none of whom really I knew before we met yesterday on our warm-up call for today. Over the course of the next hour or so, I'll be asking them questions about their farming and processing experience and about some of the relationships that they have, and just getting to know them a little bit better, and hearing their observations and opinions and lived experience. So we have Anggela Sara, or Yella, as I'll be calling her, from IMSA in Peru, Nima Tenzing Sherpa from the Lacali Coffee Estate in Nepal, and Daniel Cortés from Finca Los Andes in Colombia. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. If you are coming to this discussion never having seen this coffee systems map, that seems unlikely, given that it's all over the branding for this on Instagram and on our website. But if you haven't seen this before and you have any questions about it now, or if at the end of this discussion you just want more of this systems map, you can go to the website that's listed here and find a few different written pieces on it. Also a link to the discussion that we had at the Expo weekend event a few months ago about the development of the systems map. So I'll be focusing today on our panelists and not going too much into the background of how we developed this particular tool and what its intended use is, and who contributed to the identification of these activities and these different actors. So I encourage you, if you do have questions and if you do want to get closer to this, to go to the website there. So I mentioned already that I haven't spent much time with our panelists. And that brings me to how we put together today's discussion and how we're going to be putting together the panels for our upcoming discussions in this series also, which is that we really maximized the use of our vast social media network. On Instagram and on Twitter, we put out a call using this systems map graphic for input from anyone who follows us to put in the comments suggestions of people who would be good for us to talk to about their experiences in each of these categories. You can see in the graphic here that we're really looking at the 6 activities in the center of the wheel: brewing, roasting, importing, exporting, processing, and farming. So we started with farming and processing a couple weeks ago, put out a call to our social media audience to suggest people that we should talk to about farming and processing. And we got an extraordinary number of suggestions and names of people. And many of those people we reached out to, and they contributed something to the conversation that we're going to have today, based on their experiences of being connected or not as connected as they'd like to be to other actors in this map. So at the end of the webinar, I'll shout out a few of those individuals specifically, but generally this is a webinar and a discussion that is the product of a lot of different people's input. And we are going to be doing something similar. In fact, we already started for the next session on exporting, looking for suggestions of who we should talk to, who is in coffee that we may or may not know, who's doing work that is inspiring you or is making you think, or would just be a voice you'd like to hear from in a conversation about any of these different activities. So exporting, importing, roasting, brewing, tell us on social media, post their names here in the chat, their social media handles. We're always looking for different perspectives, and we'd love to hear from you. So the questions that we asked of everyone who was recommended to us were the same. We asked, which actors are you most familiar with? Which actors are you least familiar with? And are there actors you would like to be more connected with? Using the systems map as the guide for that. So I will be asking each of our panelists to reflect a little bit on their own answers to those questions, and then also to respond to some of the other feedback that we got and some of the most common responses, because despite the fact that we got responses from all across the world and from producers of all sizes, processing facilities of all sizes, there were some similarities that I think are interesting and worth our consideration as we're trying to understand, using this map, how the coffee system works, who's involved, and who it's working for, as well as where we might have opportunities for improvement in the near and long-term future. But before we get into questions, I haven't forgotten that I haven't really introduced our panelists yet, so I'm going to go ahead and take a second and do that. So Yella, can I start with you? I know about you that you're a 3rd-generation coffee farmer, but that you haven't always worked in coffee. So I wondered if you would introduce yourself briefly, tell us a little bit about how you came back to coffee and what it is that you do.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm from Villarrica. Yeah, I'm for a coffee generation. I'm the 3rd. But I decided to study dentistry. I'm a surgeon then. But I figured out that coffee was my passion when I was invited in a cupping coffee class. I discovered that, okay, I want to work in this and come back to my roots and start to study in coffee stuffs. Like in a university, I make a specialization in coffee and cacao cooperative management, and then like roasting courses, cuppings, and well, now I'm a national barista judge. So yeah, for me it was a discover that my really passion was coffee, and I need to come back there to be happy.
So if you are involved in processing, if your family is involved in farming, you're also a judge now, do some roasting, that seems like a lot of activities for an individual or even one family to take part in. Is that typical, or is that unusual? You know, is this typical of coffee people in farming and processing, or is it unusual?
Uh, Now uh, are a lot of well, my generation have more people involved in continue the coffee, but not just in exporting the green bean. They are like interested in start to a roasting business, open coffee shops, and get the not just the bean, it's bean to cup. So now it's like a trend. There are more people younger than me than start to make this new business to increase the money in the families.
Interesting. I'd love to talk more about that diversification. Um, Nima, you, on the other hand, are a first generation coffee farmer. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into coffee and what it is that you and your family are doing now?
Yes, Kim, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone. I'm from Nepal. I'm Nima Sherpa. Coffee was not our primary business, actually. It so happened because of a philanthropic project that my father was involved back in 2008. So I was in the US until 2008, and my father was involved in a philanthropic project building schools in this remote area of what we call Nuwako district. It's one of the districts where our farm is. And then he wanted to do something that could impact people's lives, actually. And he did a lot of research and found out that coffee can be a very good sustainable crop for these people living in this particular district. So then he happened to call me one night and said, you know, I want, because we come from a tribal background, so coffee was not our forte, for example. So then he called me up and said, I want you to be a part of a coffee project that can impact people's lives and at the same time can generate, you know, decent revenue in the long period of time. So then I came back in 2008, and prior to coffee farming, I had no idea about what coffee was all about. I used to drink a lot of coffees, but I had never seen a coffee plant, nor did I know anything about farming. So as I spent more time in the farm, staying with these local people, I kind of realized that the amount of amenities or how lucky I was in terms of education, in terms of all the simple things that we can get in life, which these people were not getting or deprived of. So from that moment, I thought I should do something for these people and for the community as well. So from 2008, we started growing coffees with the help of these locals in this particular district. And from there, my passion slowly grew from growing. Although I didn't know anything about growing, I got a lot of help from local institutions. And I went to countries like India, where I happened to visit a lot of coffee farms, get a lot of knowledge from those farmers as well. And in the lapse of time, I happened to, get most of the education that the specialty coffee has to offer in terms of barista, roasting, sensors, and so on. So I completed my Q grading. I did my Q processing as well. So that kind of happened slowly as my progression in the coffee industry grew. And today, right from 2013, we have been exporting coffees to a lot of specialty coffee roasters and importers in the US. And for me, the best thing for me in the coffee industry is I happen to meet a lot of good people, made a lot of good friends, and made a very good relations with a lot of farmers and with a lot of importers as well. So I think I'm enjoying my whole role in the coffee industry, and at the same time, I get myself involved with a lot of social impact coffee projects and work directly with coffee farmers where I help them teach about coffee growing, pruning techniques, nutrient management, and definitely processing. So these are the things that I am particularly involved in the whole coffee industry.
Thank you, Nima. Daniel, in your case, kind of like Yella, you came back to coffee after doing something else for a little while, and I wonder whether well, if you could introduce yourself and then also maybe comment a little bit on what Yella said about young people. And I wonder whether your experience is similar of seeing young people sort of in farming take up different other avenues or explore different ways of being involved in coffee.
Yes, so hi everyone. My name is Daniel Cortés. I'm from Colombia, and along with my father, we have a coffee processing farm in Huila, which is like south of the country. And yes, I came, although I always grew up like seeing my father working in the business, talking about coffee, excited about the farm. I never really got into it until about a year and a half ago. And I do believe younger generations are all about innovation, trying to add technology, like to input social media. So it's really important for me to the farm to have an identity. So my brother, who works in as a publicist, he he's been helping a lot with developing the brand, and also we've been developing the website. And I believe my father, without the help of our generation, my brothers and my sister and I, he wouldn't be able to do that. And it's really also a concern, and we talked about it yesterday, and I talked about it in the emails I exchanged before I got invited to this, that in Colombia the coffee producers, our age, like average, is getting older every year. So younger generations are not interested in farming and processing coffee because they don't see way at like a profitable way or sustainable way of living. And that's a really big problem here in Colombia. And I was discussing this also yesterday. A lot of farmers are moving, like leaving, ditching their coffee fields for avocado and other fruits, which are more profitable. And, and that's the case of seeing. Although in specialty coffee, there's been a lot of younger people. I've seen a lot of young people working, and they don't specifically come from farming or processing. As me, I'm a journalist. I don't know. I never studied about farming or processing, and also I've known lawyers, I've known economists, I've known every kind of professions that are involved with coffee. So I do believe the more younger people get involved in coffee, um, the better the sustainable approaching to this can be. So yes, I'm excited to be like a younger version of my father and working in the family business as well.
Yella, I think you're muted.
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you were talking to us. Sorry about that, Daniel. To build on what you said, this narrative of aging coffee farmers and younger people not seeing the opportunity in coffee, that's one that I think, it's not universal, but it's pretty well known around the world. It's not specific to Colombia. And I wonder whether diversification, whether that's from producing coffee to also marketing coffee to roasting coffee to other coffee activities, or diversifying in growing something other than coffee, is that a strategy for coffee producers to pursue, that results in kind of more connections? Like, is it because these older farmers are not as connected, and younger farmers don't see a future for themselves, that younger people are using social media, using these tools to try to find alternatives? Do you think, and is connectedness, I guess I'm asking, part of or a potential solution here? Or is there no hope, and young people are just going to leave farming because it's not profitable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know there's
Who
like
go first?
like okay. I know there's been like a lot of criticism about social media and changes they are, and
Oh, Daniel, your connection is cutting out. Yella, do you have any experience with that in terms of young people in your area in Peru? Do they see opportunity in coffee, and is being well connected to other farmers or to other people in the value chain part of that? Does that play a role in their decision making, do you think?
Okay, here we have like two groups. One group that, okay, are younger people that want to keep with the family business, and the other that don't see a coffee farm like a company or like a future. It's like, no, I don't want to work in that. The people that want to are using a lot of social media tools, Instagram, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, business, Facebook, and now it's a trend that everybody are uploading photos, videos, because the consumer wants to know where is the product that they are buying. So this real fair trade, real slow food consumption are a new way to the consumers to pay, but knowing why I'm paying more money for this coffee. I want to know how is the harvest, how is the picking, how is processing, how is roasting, or like a producer, you need to communicate it all the way that this bean are transforming to be a coffee in the cup.
So it seems like it's easier than ever, or there are more tools available than ever to be connected. But do you think that's resulted in most farmers being more connected, or is it still reserved for young people?
Yeah, here is for young people and in the cities, because we have a really bad signal in most of the coffee farmers. So they and are a lot of, for example, my grandpa generations, they don't wanna be involved with the technology. They don't like it and don't want it. So and are a lot of people that can afford it. That's other problem, no?
Yeah. Well, going back to the original questions and the systems map for a second, Nima, I'd love to hear from you, because I think that probably for many people in the webinar, Nepal being a producer of less coffee, and many of the farmers that you work with being more recent entrants to coffee production than many of Daniel and Yella's neighbors, probably. I wonder who you feel like, in terms of the different actors in the coffee system, who are you and the farmers you work with the most connected to? And if I pull up my slide here, I can like put the activities that you're involved with and the actors you're most connected to, most familiar with.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I would be more connected with a lot of farmers, a lot of small scale farmers, because this is because if you talk about Nepal, majority of the coffee that is being produced in Nepal comes from these small scale farmers, covering roughly about 2 to 10 acres of land in general. So in that regards, there is definitely a lot of coffee that's been grown by these small scale farmers. And in the recent years, because if you look at the economy of Nepal in general, our economy is more dependent on a lot of remittance, being because we have a lot of problems with migrant laborers, because unfortunately the country does not have a lot of employment. So the younger generations are moving to a better job in these Gulf countries and abroad. But in these recent years, what I have found out is I found out a lot of these young people are coming back to Nepal and trying to be involved in agriculture. And specifically, I have seen a lot of people keeping an interest in coffee growing. So that for me is a positive sign in terms of increasing the productivity of coffee in general. And pretty much every day I get a lot of calls from these small-scale farmers about how to grow coffee, where to get the coffee seeds, and all those things. But having said that, there's definitely a huge lack of disconnect of knowledge between these people, because what I have realized is the whole system, the whole process of farming in Nepal is still very traditional, and specifically in coffee, I believe that we need to add more science to it, because a lot of farmers are pretty much cutting down trees and growing more coffees, and I want these farmers to grow more cash crops like intercropping, and as well as a lot of cover crops, so they can get additional benefits or additional revenue from those cover crops as well. And at the same time, they can increase the fertility of the soil as well. Like I said yesterday, my job right now is working more on the soil aspect of it, because at the end of the day, when you don't have a proper fertile soil, it's not easy to grow coffee. And Nepal, we grow everything organic. So by default, a lot of coffee that comes from Nepal is pretty much organic. But having said that, you are losing a lot on the yield. And when we do a lot of research, found out that farmers lack a lot of knowledge in terms of how to make a proper fertilizer or compost, and they keep on digging up the soil, so that's losing a lot of the fertility in the soil as well. So my involvement in general in coffee the value chain is mostly with the farmers, trying to go there, try to reach with these people, spend some time, get their views on what coffee means to them and how they want to grow these coffees. And the most important question from a lot of these farmers at the end of the day is, can we get a market for our coffees? Can we get a home for these coffees? Because at the end of the day, no matter how hard you work, your coffees need to be sold in a particular price and a particular market. So this is where I try to somewhat convince these people, or try to motivate these people that provided that you grow quality coffee in a specialty standard, there should be a home for you. So this is my approach to what I do.
Yeah. And so these farmers that you work with, are you mostly are you their connection to the other actors, like, to importers or consumers, or do they have, contact with non-governmental agencies, or you mentioned the need for research, which I think we can come back to that in terms of actors you'd like to be more connected to. But, if I look at this list, are these farmers, connected to many other actors besides you as a kind of a processor
Absolutely.
and someone who has a lot of expertise, or are they, like really sort of lacking in that, in those relationships?
Absolutely, we have we have the National Coffee Board, where we have a lot of extension service providers directly related working in coffee. But a lot of time, these knowledge that they have, or they give to these farmers, sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. And in my experience, I think at the end of the day, like I said, most of the farmers, they want to know how can they sell their coffees, and can their coffee have a market for the no matter if it's a 5 kg or a 100 kg bag. So definitely there's a lot of local NGOs and INGOs that are working in coffee, and I think they kind of build that platform for a lot of these farmers to grow more coffee. I came later on, but these platforms were already built by these lot of people. But When it comes to the specialty coffee, this is where my focus mainly lies on, and it's just been like 5 years that a lot of farmers are now trying to introduce more specialty lots, trying to know how can their coffee become a specialty coffee, and this is where I kind of evaluate their coffees every year by cupping it and giving them a proper feedback of how can they improve the quality of the coffee, be it in fermentation or drying or pruning techniques, or be it in the varietal as well. So of course, prior to me coming in the industry, there has always been a lot of service providers, extension service providers from a lot of different NGOs, and I think me just being one, I'm just one person trying to make some changes in the industry. But I hope a lot of, if these farmers can get that knowledge and inclusively make the coffee a specialty grade, then I'm sure their coffees can have a particular market of their own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You mentioned, that you are heavily involved in processing improvement, and Daniel, I know that that on your farm, and then or your father's farm, and also for many producers in Colombia, farming and processing really go hand in hand. Those things are mostly done together. And I wonder, for you all, who or which actors are you the most connected to? And just to give it a little bit of that context from other responses we received, some of the most common responses were mills, so another stage of processing, transportation companies, and certifications. I don't know if those are any of those is true for you, but as someone who does both of those things, I wonder whether you have more relationships or it's not really a factor.
Yes, we do the farming and processing at the farm, and I do believe most specialty coffee producers are, because they want to have total control of their process and the whole process in the coffee. So it's really important for specialty coffee producers to have their own mills in the farm, right when you can see it and experiment and innovate and everything else. And the answers I put like skill and like the most familiar actors. I wrote skilled laborers, producers, and mills, because it's mostly what we do in the farm. But for example, that was something else I wanted to talk about are the certifications, because I believe I know their intentions is to like close the gap in the poverty line and to help producers be more sustainable and profitable. But it's really hard when you try to apply for a certification and they send you a huge amount of requests, and then you have to pay for the visit, and it's in dollars, and on the dollar, and in comparison with the Colombian peso, it's over the roof. So it's an expense we cannot really afford right now. And there's a huge tendency right now on organic certification, mostly in Europe. So every time we get contact with some roaster or some potential buyer, oh, do you have organic certifications? I tell them, no, we don't, but we don't use fertilizer, we don't use pesticides. And they say, okay, but without the certification, there's no point in continuing this conversation. And I do know there's something roasters or buyers are asking this because their clients are asking this, but it's really hard because it's really expensive, and you need to say, okay, should I get a certification on organic or fair trade, or do I pay labor at the farm? So and also like I read an article and how much fair trade had impacted coffee prices and FOB prices in Costa Rica, and there was barely a difference. So going through a whole process of getting certified and paying for that certification, and then not seeing the actual revenue, it would be heartbreaking. So yes.
Yeah, what you're highlighting here is absolutely a disconnect in that in the understanding or very different understandings from, say, the the roaster or the retailer or certainly the consumer about what a certification signifies and the value of it and the amount of effort required and the investment on the part of the farmer or the farmer and processor in this case. And again, you're highlighting something that I think is commonly noted, or I've heard that frustration expressed before. But I think that seldom do we think about it in terms of just the very different understandings that these different groups have of what certification entails, what it means, what's required of it. And I think that this you juxtapose, or you put it in terms of paying labor and acquiring a certification, and both of those things are substantial costs. I think that the cost of labor and the challenges around securing skilled labor is another one of those issues or areas that probably many people who are involved in activities other than farming and processing don't really think about and account for adequately.
Yes, exactly. And that's another part I do want to see in the near future. It's like an utopia, but to see the map totally interconnected, like lines, everyone interconnected, because for to have money in the farm, you need to sell the coffee. But to sell the coffee, you need pickers, and to pay pickers, you need money. So it's really hard. For example, my father and I have tried it without success, but to talk about long-term relationship with buyers, and when the harvest is coming, try to get an anticipation so that we can pay labor. And so that will be like a really good improvement, because sometimes there's like a week when you have a lot of coffee and a lot of labor and you need to pay the bills, but you don't have where to get the money because you don't have coffee right now, so you can't sell anything. So it's like so then most of the farmers need to go to the bank and ask for a loan, and then you get like stuck into the system, and it's really hard. So
yeah,
in that term also would be great.
Yeah, that brings me to the next question that we asked you all about which actors you feel like you were least connected to. And I will build on what you just said, Danielle, to note that probably the most common response we got to this was financial institutions, that people feel like, both that they are not connected to financial institutions or insurance companies. When we get then into who people would like to be more connected to, many people would like to be more connected to financial institutions. So I'll just throw that out there and see if any of the three of you has anything to wants to either build on that, like the financial institutions relationship, or note some other actor that you feel like you or the farmers that you work with, your communities, are not really connected to at all.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to answer briefly. The thing is that, for example, in Colombia, I don't know in the rest of the producing countries, but I figure it's something similar. People in coffee, like producers, they don't even have a bank account. I mean, they don't even appear in the system. They don't exist in the system. They don't like banks and insurance companies because they are afraid of them. They are more of, give me my money and I put it under the mattress. So yes, it's really hard to like get talk to them about financial institutions, getting a bank account, because they don't like it. And I do understand that, but yes, it's really hard. And asking for loans, it's really easy. I mean, banks will throw you loans like every single day, but then you get into a vicious cycle that I was talking about, that is you get into a loan, and then for some reason, I don't know, you get coffee leaf rust, or coffee doesn't get the quality you were expected, and then you can sell the coffee really good, and then you don't have money to pay the loan. So there's like a whole vicious cycle. But obviously there are good companies and good organizations that are helping with this issue. And so yeah, that's my concern about financial institutions.
Yeah. Yela, I saw you nodding when Daniel was talking about the lack of trust or the lack of access that many farmers have to financial institutions. Did you want to add something there? Is that experience familiar to you?
Yeah, we have here a lot of problems too with financial access, or we have some experience too. The bank, then the producers never pay the loans, so they don't want to trust them again. That's one, and the other is then the money exchange. We work a lot with dollars, so here, if something political happens, this has a really big change. So the producers make all the transactions in dollars, can lose money or can win, but nobody knows like for 100%. So that's a really big problem with financial. And the other part, like Daniel says, that a lot of problems with the pickers and the producers don't have bank accounts, and you can't pay it like in a safe way. You need to pay like in cash, and that's, yeah, in the high pickers seasons is a lot of problems with bad people that can steal you. I don't know, it's no a bank in the farm. You need to go to the city, pick the money and take it to the farm. So in between, you can have problems.
Yeah, I think you just talked about currency valuation or doing business in dollars, and then paying pickers in local currency. And I think that's another one of those issues that is very relevant and has a huge impact on people involved in farming and processing, maybe also exporting, that is not very well understood or very clearly seen by people who work in the roasting and brewing activities. It's not something that's part of the narrative about coffee production, or even about the challenges, the way that something like climate change would be. While climate change, we're very far from solutions. At least I feel like there's a kind of awareness that, ooh, yeah, this is really challenging. And currency valuation and the fluctuations of one currency versus the dollar, I think is not much discussed at all. All right, so the last question that we had from the
can I just add something else?
Sure.
Okay, quickly, and I feel that there's need to be a lot more of discussion regarding waste. As I told you before, I'm not like really, I'm not like expert. I've only been working in coffee like a year and a half, but I've seen there's a lot of waste in coffee producing and coffee processing. That the tons of water you use and you contaminate, it's really high. And for example, the coffee musk, every time you depot coffee, that coffee becomes waste. We use it as compost, and we also trying to start like developing tea, like with the coffee husk. But I know most producers can do that, so there's need to be like more conscious information and accessible information for producers regarding waste, because it's really concerning how much it's going to affect the earth in, I don't know, a couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's that I totally agree with that, and that is also something that when we put this map together, wanted to demonstrate that there are products and and things that happen that don't fit neatly into this seed to cup diagram, where we start off with the beautiful planting of the seed, and we end with the beautiful moment of a coffee drinker drinking their coffee and thinking it's delicious. And some of those omissions are for reasons of efficiency and storytelling, but sometimes those omissions can lead us to forget some of the impact that we have, that all of our activities have, and that there's not just at the end stage with coffee brewing, there's going to be some coffee waste at the end of that, unless you eat the coffee seed bean whole. There's going to be some waste there, but then also at all these other stages along the way. Okay, so the last question we had for you all was about who you would like to be more connected to. And then once I ask you for your opinions here, we'll get to some of the audience questions, because I can see that we have a bunch of them, and many of them are quite good. So each of you had answers to this that I thought were really interesting, because unlike in the most and least connected responses, your responses here were quite unique, and I didn't see anyone else respond the way that you did. Yella, in your case, when you responded that one actor you'd like to be more connected to was government agencies. And I wondered if you could comment on that. I don't know what it says about other people's relationship with government agencies that they didn't put those on the list. But is that something where you feel like is that about Peru? Is that about a role you see government could really serve and fill a gap that industry isn't filling? Yeah, I'd love to know what prompted you to respond that way. Oh no! Oh yes, okay. There you
are. I'm really connected with the governmental agencies, because here in Peru we have a lot of problems with organizational issues than the old ones. So now the government make some divisions in programs. So our financials with external help like USAID, or with Peruvian own resources. So they help with technical assistance to the coffee and cacao farmers to change coca plants, because we have a lot of coca problems. So they used to help just with money and, I don't know, some seeds, but never was a continuous work. So now they're starting to improve coffee machines plantations. So they help and teach to them to transform the coffee and cacao so they can sell a final product. So I'm really connected because I work a lot with them, like IMSA, and it's the company that I work. So yeah, I'm really connected with them. And they try to be more involved with the new trends. No more than just give money and whatever you want. No. So I think that is an important aspect that the governmental are working. But the bad part is that no, all the producers are learning about how to use these projects. So they just join it and have the machines, and then it's like, okay, goodbye, and never finish it, the whole idea of the project.
Yeah, I think you note some of the strengths of government there, and then also some of the historical challenges, not just in Peru but elsewhere, also about the long-term sustainability of some of the projects that they get funding for a defined period of time, and then don't have any kind of exit plan or transition to a different model built into them. Nima, in your case, you responded to this question about who you'd like to be more connected to, but with a lot of excitement about research and the potential for research and opportunities around research. And you already spoke on this on this panel to your interest in soil and in diversification or cover crops and other agricultural avenues. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of what you see as the potential for research.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. Like in Nepal, there are a lot of coffee farmers growing coffees, but the farmers, most of the farmers, they don't even know what varietal of coffee they are growing. So when we export coffees, we might know that it's either Typica or Bourbon, but it's still very vague. And that's pretty much apparent to a lot of coffee growers in Nepal because they don't know what varieties of coffees they have, and all the understandings are based on our research on the color of the leaves and the distance between the internodal distances. So definitely, I would like to know, like I would like to be more connected with, I would say, like world institutions like the World Coffee Research, where they have a lot of different programs, like the ones that I've been currently reading on. They call it, I think, the World Coffee Monitoring Program or something like that, where they are helping setting up a lot of certified nurseries with a lot of certified varietal. Because in Nepal, the coffees is grown in between 1,000 to roughly about 1,600 meters above sea level. If we go above 1,600 meters, we get a lot of frost. And unfortunately, this year we had a severe frost in Nepal, which decreased the productivity of coffees more than 40%. So we need to come up with proper varietal selections, and where these selections, where these varieties would be, appropriate for certain elevations, certain soil type, or certain microclimate. And apparently, we say we have Bourbons, Typica, Katuras, and Pacamaras, but we're still lacking a lot of knowledge in terms of which varietals yield better and which varieties would give us a proper quality cup when we are cupping the coffees and so on. So definitely, if we can have these research institutions in Nepal, then everything could be more based on science, and it would also help a lot of farmers to get loans from the banks, like financial institutions, because then we would have a better understanding of how much yield would I be expecting next year, based on the research being done at these particular plots. So I think that would be more justifiable to these lending agencies or credit agencies, where they can exactly know, if their loans can be covered up with these coffees when they export it, both in the cup and both in the yield as well.
Yeah, you make a good point there to connect the research institution to the financial institution. That with better research and a greater understanding, that can potentially unlock some financing that would be unavailable without some kind of more scientific backing for whatever the project or the loan proposal would be.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, because in Nepal, when we apply for a loan, a lot of things are based on just, okay, I have this many land. If I grow 1,000 plants, this would give me, if I multiply that with 5 kgs of ripe cherries, that would give me this many production. And then, if I can sell it in this price, I can get this revenue. But what we lack is a proper understanding of exactly how much yield would we be expecting, provided the varietal of coffee that we have in the farm. And right now, it's a mix of a lot of varieties grown everywhere in Nepal. So if these can be separated by varietal, by elevation, or by microclimate, I think that would make that would add up a lot of value to these small farmers, because, like I said, these are like farmers who are talking about like covering 2 to roughly about 10 acres of land. So things like this would definitely help a lot of producers in Nepal. And I would also like to add up talking about a lot about soil as well, because in Nepal there's a lot of I would say most of the soil is pretty much depleted, because there's a lot of tillage in the soil, and we don't grow a lot of cover crops. And whatever shades we have, these are like old trees, not fruit trees. So I would advise, proper. I would request proper soil experts to be in line with these farmers, so where we can get training from these experts, and that could help.
Yeah, yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit now and get some of the audience or the questions from everyone who's been watching and listening to us for the past hour or so to all of you. And I can't help but notice we have 3 different questions that have come in around something related to direct relationships between producers and buyers. A couple of them asking you all to share any advice you have or any kind of a experience with direct relationships. And Daniel, I'm most worried about your internet connection, but since you talked about social media earlier and you and your brother, I'd love to put that question to you first about whether you have any relationship experience and advice when it comes to producers and roasters.
Yeah, yes. Talking about being connected, and my connectivity is the worst. So yes, I mean, direct trade is really, really hard, and I've seen a lot of roasters, buyers, importers, exporters talking about direct trade. But most of the parts, I believe, is just a marketing tool. What I do believe is direct trade is the possibility that sustainable long relationship. And by this I
think we lost the end of Danielle's comment. Yella or Nima, do either of you want to pick that up and add to it?
Yeah, sure. Well, in Nepal's case, I think like if I would have to say about my experiences, most of the farmers that I work with and are direct trade coffees. These are coffees that I work with the farmers, and then I represent or showcase their coffees to our roasters in the U.S. or importers in the U.S., saying that giving them a proper rundown of the farmers, the coffee that they have and the volume that they have. And I think more than that, the important thing is transparency for me. I need to explain my farmers that the price that's been paid to me and how much price was paid to the ultimate farmers. And I keep that very transparent. So I think that for me defines, that for me makes it more clear for everyone in the value chain, from how much I pay to the farmers to how much I fetch by selling my coffees. So in that way, I kind of build trust with these farmers, and in a long relationship, that helps me get better coffees from these people.
Yeah, I think transparency, that you note that for yourself, and then also that is increasingly just emerged as a kind of key to building trust, whether we're talking about people who share a language and a culture, and certainly when we're talking about people who are separated by not only geography but also by language and by culture. So more greater insight into what it is that someone does and the value they provide, and not only whatever the value is that they receive for their work in the value chain. Yella, I have a question here that I wanted to put to you both as someone who has has a family history in coffee, and then also someone who's involved in the sort of processing side of things, and so in contact with farmers in a lot of different places, probably having a lot of different experiences, and that's about the effects of climate change. So one of the questions we got is about or a comment about the challenges of increasing coffee quantity and improving quality. So, what are the challenges that most farmers face in terms of production and processing, such as drying, and what should they do to mitigate climate change effect? I mean, I don't want to put you in the position of being a climate change expert for the world, but I imagine you've seen some different strategies, and I wonder if you have anything to share.
Okay. Well, the climate exchange, change. Sorry, it's a reality, and it's impacting in the coffee fields. Yeah, it's a reality. So the biggest problem for us, for example, all I listen in the family is that how it's changing the times to make the for example, the plantations, to the change of the seeds, to when you need to put the fertilizers, when you need to, I don't know, make the word, that is the poda, and it's cutting some plants. We used to have a calendar. We used to have like dates, no? To January till March we have, I don't know, floration. To April to September we have picking examples, right? But now no, now we have like coffee all the year, and you need to do the labors different. The coffee plantations, all the seeds doesn't work like used to be. We have problems to face, but all the years are changing. And the rains, that's a really big problem, because now are changing the times that when you're supposed to be raining times, and yeah, affecting in the coffee challenge. That we have a lot of challenge in the coffee farms now with climate exchange. These are like more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, in Nepal, I think it's the same. Climate change has definitely hit us hard. I would say just last year, we had a lot of decrease in the crop, especially because of this frost. So, we used to talk in Nepal. We used to talk about, okay, coffee should be grown between 1,000 meters to roughly about 1,500 meters. But now we're getting frost around 1,300 meters also. So that is a result of the climate change, and that that results in a lot of damage in the coffee plants, at the time when we're supposed to get the harvest. So definitely, that's one issue. And the other issue would be a lot of farmers, they don't prune their coffee trees in a lot of areas. So what that leads to a lot of skin borer and the leaf rust as well, because farmers, I've seen some farmers never ever prune a tree, and the trees is probably as tall as a big old tree. So there's a huge lack of education in terms of pruning, because a lot of farmers, they get scared because they don't want to stump the trees, because they're afraid because they might lose their harvest, they must lose their productivity for a year. But we need to convince these people about the right techniques of pruning, and as a result of that, we have seen a lot of problems with leaf rust. More than leaf rust, I think is the white skin borer in Nepal that we are facing a huge problem, and this is also a result of climate change, because the temperature is getting hotter every day, and especially when it's the time to rain, it doesn't rain in time. So definitely that has resulted us in taking extra precautions to our farms, to the coffee plants that we grow. So we have to be careful. So definitely climate change has had an effect in everybody in Nepal, and whoever are growing coffees, for sure.
Yeah, I think it would be hard pressed to find anyone involved in farming or processing, but especially farming, who hasn't felt the impact of climate change. And what I'm hearing from you all is that there are many different strategies being employed by individuals and in different regions, depending on the effect, to adapt, but nothing that feels like a surefire strategy for climate resilience for the future. So there's a lot of work, or that speaks to the amount of work that there is still to do. I think we have time for
Can you hear me? Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're there. Hey.
Yeah, I turned off the camera so that maybe it can improve. I just wanted to point out that regarding climate change, also buyers really need to understand that coffee will not be exactly the same year after year. That's a guarantee. If there's a lot of sun, coffee cherries will be charged with a lot of more sugar. So if coffee probably will be even sweeter with more microorganisms working there, and it will be better quality. But for example, if it rains a lot, the coffee cherries will be filled with water, and that water will be drained, and with that water will be carrying out all of the sugar. So I mean, I do know that for long-term commitments and direct relationships, roasters and buyers always are looking for consistency. But
I think we lost you again, Danielle. But I think that where you're going with that, or I will say that what it makes me think of, so as not to put words in your mouth, is that while the desire for consistency is absolutely understandable, some sort of understanding about the lack of control that that anyone can have in this process when we are talking about an agricultural product, and then an agricultural product in variable a variable climate, often grown by vulnerable or economically vulnerable actors. So I think we have time for one more question, and there was one here that that got to something actually that that Danielle touched on earlier, and it relates to a specific actor in the outer wheel of the systems map, which is the intercontinental exchange, where you would go to find the C price, the commodity futures price for coffee, and the person is asking about how this affects each of you, or how you see your relationship to it, acknowledging that as individuals, you may feel like you have very little influence on that, you know, on that market price, but be highly impacted by it. So I think that this is one I'd like to end on, because we've talked some about the power of direct relationships and transparency. I wondered the degree to which you feel like this price, this entity, has an outsized influence over the life of a farmer and processor.
When you close the contracts or make all the business in other, used to be in US dollars, you make it with some range of change. Then if something happened in your original country, then with your own exchange money, or even your own money, you for example here soles, you can lose the range that you in the beginning you packed the contract, and or maybe you can win. It's almost a lose. Here we have a lot of governmental problems with our biggest our presidents, congressmen, and all the change, all the political fights make a really bad change about the exchange type of money, and always are losing. So when the buyers are paying, maybe the person that you really win for your business, this will be like less than you in the first period you was like thinking you will earn. So yeah, it's a problem, but nobody wants to make a contract in your own type of your own money. So if the buyers can understand that, maybe I don't know, realities can change.
Yeah, there's an enormous amount of risk involved in trying to ignore that, which speaks to the influence and the power that it has.
Mm-hmm. Well, in Nepal's case, I think since we don't produce a lot of coffees, we are completely disconnected with the commodity price, coffee price, because one thing about Nepal is the farm gate prices of coffees in Nepal is very expensive, compared to other coffee producing nations. So when we talk about fair trade price and commodity price, I think the prices that a lot of farmers fetch are already above these fair trade prices. And this is why I talk about a lot about relationship with the farmers is the buyers need to understand. You are buying a coffee where the volumes are low, and the quality might not be there, although you might be paying double of what you might be paying in other countries with the specialty standard. So definitely, the farmers would need to understand the quality of the coffees, and they need to really dig deeper in terms of what is their cost of production.
Yeah.
The economics of coffees in general, I would say, because most of the farmers in Nepal, we don't understand the exact cost of producing a kilo of coffee, and that results in a price that is so negatively impacted by a lot of buyers, because they might say, okay, my coffee can be $10, but but the quality can be 79 or just about specialty, and those are the things that we have to understand, that these farmers are trying to do something, trying to fetch a better price, but that sometimes that price might not be justifiable to a lot of buyers. So we need to also train these farmers about the right way of calculating the cost of production of their coffees, so that buyers on the other end understand exactly how much input or how much cost has been involved in producing that particular lot of coffees.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it's a good reminder also that there are alternatives, alternative types of relationships, alternative value chains and markets, and also of the fact that that a greater understanding of cost of production would benefit not only farmers, but again, anyone who's involved in this, in any of these value chains, regardless of their role. So I think that's going to be the last comment we have today. I'm gonna trying to be conscious of time. I appreciate everyone hanging on with us for these extra 15 minutes after the hour. We've intentionally started to build ourselves a little bit of extra time, because a good discussion always takes longer than an hour, we found. But I would be remiss if I didn't return to the thanks that I promised I would give at the beginning of the hour, to all of the people listed here who contributed their time, their responses, their experiences, to help us shape these questions and this conversation. So all of these folks and more also who commented on our posts recommended we expand our network, which we absolutely did. I also should thank, and I should have at the top of the webinar also, Savor Brands, who underwrote this series. So this session, our conversation today, and then the next ones that we'll be having also. You can see that, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be talking to exporters next week at the same time on October 28th, and then talking to importers the following week, and then finishing off with people who are involved in coffee brewing and coffee roasting on November 18th. So if you are curious to hear some of the perspectives of these other actors on their relationships, the connections that they have, and the areas where they feel like they would benefit from greater connectivity, or if you have a suggestion about someone that we should talk to who's involved in any of those things, then please reach out to us and let us know. Otherwise, once again, panelists, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for at all different hours logging on and sharing your experiences with us. And I hope that we can do it again sometime.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for having us.
Thanks.